Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Blindspot. A great premiere, a lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, picking up immediately where season 4's finale left us. Obviously, kind of giving us a little more context. We see Tasha and Reed sneaking off, and you're like, finally, all the damn ups and downs during this relationship. Finally, it's about goddamn time. And they're doing their thing. And at the same time, Afrin is like, can I really trust you? Like, talking to, Whites about it. And he was like, yeah, you can. And it's like, luckily, he found out about Madeline's drone strike. And he warns the team in time. But then it's like the missile hits. Then we get that hard cut. 2 months later, we see someone walking in the middle of New York's Times Square or whatever. And immediately I'm like, okay, is that Jane? Are they about to make an announcement? Like, are they going to pull almost a bit of a Reddington where it's like, oh, here I am, and the FBI is going to jump on you? I thought that's what it was. And then, we see the bird symbol fly up, and I was like, oh, the bird tattoo. I was like, oh, so where's this all going to go? And it turns out that wasn't Jane. This actually is what instigates the group getting together, because basically we end up finding out when they reunite, it's been 2 months and they basically scattered, and then when they, because we hear White's talking to Madeline, because Madeline's like, oh, you think this is the team letting it? It's like, but they've been quiet for the past 2 months. Why send up a flag like this? And, it's like, yeah, you got to find all of them. It's like, well, not all of them, because not everyone made it. And that was the thing going into this. I already knew, because the promotional material is like, one of them's not going to make it. And it's so sad because someone left a comment, I want to say a week or so ago on my season 4 finale review, being like, I hope everyone survives and is, everything ends happily ever after, basically, type of thing. And I was like, oh, promotional material says someone's not going to survive this. I knew that. I don't know whether someone was saying that, sarcastically, knowing that, or whether they were being sincere. I think they were being sincere, but regardless, I was just like, oh, I got you. This season's going to be a bummer for you, I'm sure. But that was a big question, who was it? And then, one by one, we see the team show up, and lo and behold, who's not there? It's not Reed. I was like, you have to be shitting me. You just had a feeling like it was going to either be him or Tasha. It's like, you just had an inkling just because. What is up with all these goddamn season premieres where it's like, let's kill off a character. It's like, why? Why we got to start off seasons killing off main characters? Come on, dude. Stop doing that. So much stuff has kind of done that. More recently, Killing Evil, spoilers, killed off a major character in season, at the first episode of the season. Regardless, tangents and all that. But the fact of the matter is, that sucks. What, I literally just said, Reed and Tasha finally, all the bullshit aside, finally got together. It's now. They were joking about it and everything about, oh, you're trying to, basically settle down with me, now that you have no other choice and stuff. It's like, come on, that sucks so much. And so obviously it's they got together because obviously Patterson wants to study the bird that popped up, and Times Square and everything. But then it turns out she needed Jane's tattoo as a means of to really examine it, to be able to tell the differences, because it's not exactly like Jane's tattoo. She does her magic, and lo and behold, she ends up finding out there's a hidden message, and it's basically about Rich, that he's basically the CIA is handing him over to North Korea. And obviously we get the insight to him being held captured, and obviously for the past 2 months he has been tortured and stuff like that at this black site. It's called The Boat. The main torturer dude, he played Otis, isn't that his character's name, in Supergirl. So I was like, hey, obviously he's popped up in a multitude of other things too, but that was just kind of what's fresh in my mind at the time. But nevertheless, and basically telling Rich, oh, we're going to sell you to North Korea. It's oh, they hate me. He's like, you know what? I was, against it at first, but he's go ahead, put a bullet in my head. And the real messed up thing is we end up finding out that Tasha actually knew exactly where Rich was. She knew for a while, but it's going into a full frontal assault on this type of thing. We need to have the perfect plan or we're all dead. But Jane takes offense to that because she's like, you weren't personally tortured in a CIA black site, so you don't know what that's like. So for you to know that Rich is there and for him to be going through something like that, obviously it's like everyone kind of quickly changes the subject because Kurt is like, yeah, the fact of the matter is, what's done is done, but it is kind of like, obviously, like, I forgot, like, she was in there a couple months, if I remember correctly. She was there between season 1 and season 2, but I want to say it was a couple months Jane went through, like, some CIA torture. So, and even, Rich trying to buy time because it's like the guy's like basically running his own, because it's like, if I really knew where my team is, don't you think I would have told you by now? It's like, all right, but I do have all this other stuff, I've lived a criminal enough life. And he starts listing all this bad stuff, and he's like, the dude's like, I know what you're doing. That basically protocol says that if you keep running your mouth, we can't really like turn you over because we don't know if any of the information you're giving us is valuable or not. And like Rich is like, I have no idea what you're talking about, but the fact of the matter is, I pushed my sister down the stairs and I blamed it on the doll. And he's saying all this stuff, and dude's like, yeah, I've seen good. And he's like, really? I would have taken you. It was like he makes a reference to like a Muppet movie, and I was like, I love that. But nevertheless, they end up, waterboarding Rich. So at the same time this is all going down, they've got to find a means of rescuing Rich. And it's like, well, who's the one person because they look through it, like some data on the dark web and stuff like that. Side note, this is after, Jane and Kurt, who've been separated for so long, which obviously was a thing before now too. So it's obviously they found each other previously after so much time, and now for it to kind of happen again, to be apart, and she's like, oh, would you rather really take this like 15 minutes we know is going to take Patterson to find a new clue about where we've been, or do you want to kind of, and they start making out, and Patterson shows up, and Kurt's like, record time, and it's like, yeah, and I love Kurt coming out and being like, yeah, this better be amazing what you ended up finding out, but nevertheless, it turns out like a connection to the boat they have Show Akhtar. It turns out like his brother was there, so they had to meet up with Show. I'm like, are we going to do a little bit of like Arrow, because Arrow's final season was kind of like flashbacks to the past. I'm like, are we going to see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of like correlations between people they crossed paths with in the past kind of being allies in this case? We'll kind of dive into that in a second, but I think that could be an interesting element. Cause I was about to say, I was like, yeah, but would Show really help? I mean, he hates Rich, so I was like, would he be too a fan of that? But it's like, and for him to be like, hey, you reached out. I even love him talking about Jane and stuff. Like he's talking about, oh, I remember the first time I met you. He's like, I still like you as much as I first time I met you. You were in that green dress, kicking my ass. And he's almost like he sounds like he's getting off of it a little bit, being like, oh, he's like, if we could, he's like, I'd love, because she's like, oh, we could have a repeat of that. He's like, I wouldn't mind that. But I love the whole situation of like, basically he's like, oh, right. Because Kurt's like, oh, like, can we get to business? He's like, right. Like when I'm on meth, I'm kind of a little all over the place. I mean, Jesus, dude. He is kind of a bit of a party animal and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, basically he hates Rich, but he hates the CIA more because it turns out the CIA killed his brother because his brother was never, obviously, the blueprints were supposed to be a means for him to break his brother out of the boat. But sadly, because of that, his brother died before he could, so he wants revenge against the CIA. In particular, the dude that's torturing Rich, it's a dude he's the main torturer at the boat. My mind immediately, because I was just kind of like, because he was like, I want you to kill this guy, and obviously Kurt was like, oh, we're not. Jane was like, okay. I immediately thought like, wait, is Jane saying okay? Because we met the people that tortured her, because it was Home Dude that was part of the torture team. But I was like, was he actually there? Are we going to find out, like, is that why Jane was so okay with it? Because it's like, oh, this guy, he's got to die. I'm fine with it because the fact of the matter is he tortured me too. Like, but to be fair, he's specifically probably tied to the boat. So like, each black site probably has its specific torturer, or, whatever the case may be. So that's why I was, so that's probably not the case, but that's why I thought but it's kind of like, we need to do whatever we can to save Rich, because initially, like I said, even Tasha was kind of like, we can't really be doing this unless we have a plan and stuff like that. But it's like, they're not going to leave Rich there to be tortured and stuff like that. This is their friend, their ally and everything, it's part of the family. So obviously they're going to do whatever they can, but they have to leave Jane behind because she's an insurance policy. You don't kill him, you screw me over, I'm gonna kill Jane. So plus he already admitted the fact is he kind of likes Jane anyway, so they had to come up with the plan of like, okay, so how are we gonna do this? It's like, well, we got to go in here non-lethal. Like, aren't we supposed to kill this dude? But obviously it's like, despite the stuff we have to do to survive, Kurt's like, we're not murderers, we're not gonna do that. So And it's like, well, how many guards are going to be between us and Rich? It's like, well, at Jane's black site there were 3, at Shepard's 15. It's like, oh, great. So between 3 to 15 or maybe more. So it turns into a situation of like, okay, they're enacting their plan and everything. And luckily, Kurt gets to Rich, and Rich is like, oh my God, what are you doing? He's like, I'm getting you out of here. But he's like, no, you can't. I got a tracker. He's like, all right, I'm going to cut it out. He pulls out a big ass machete. And I was like, even though I'm at first like, why the fuck do you have that big ass machete? And he's like, whoa, did you hear me when I said it was in my neck? It's like, all right, I'm going to do it like when Shepard swallowed. He's like, I must have been in prison because I didn't see that. And then zaps him because it's like, okay, that's one way to get rid of that. And then you see Tasha go badass mode when she taking dudes down one by one, flipping car. It's like, yeah. I mean, Kurt gets in his little bits, but it's like, nah, Tasha kicks him serious. I was like, yo. They managed to make their escape, but Home Dude shows up. And I love that he puts Rich in front of him. It's like, don't worry, we know you won't shoot. And Rich is like, wait, we know that? It's like, yeah. Like, the fact of the matter is you're too valuable. Like, they want you alive. And he's like, well, they never said alive. But luckily, Tasha and Patterson showed up. And it's a situation of like, okay, well, there's another angle to this deal. It's like, yeah, I also love they never actually told... at least in the context of the episode, they never actually told Rich that this was Show Akhtar's like stuff. So I'm like, I wonder whether that, I mean, it wouldn't have changed anything, but it's just interesting they kind of left that information out. Like I said, maybe it happened in between scenes and stuff like that we didn't get to see, but it's like, all right, like we need him dead, but it's like, oh, we're not going to kill. And Rich was kind of all for it, like, all right, well, I know we'll have to make this exception, but it's like, no, we're not killing him. And it's like, well, how are you going to prove proof of death? And then Kurt pulls out that giant ass machete, and it's like, oh yeah, like you're gonna kind of like this, and you're also kind of not gonna like this. I was like, I went a step further. I was a little sadistic. I was like, are you gonna cut off his burns or something? It's like, oh, his hands. Yeah, that makes sense. And I love Show being like, oh no, you're gonna try and screw me over, I'm sure, but the fact of the matter is, I'm sure you're going to try and screw me over, but the fact is, like, oh, it turns out it is him and stuff like that. It's like, okay, because he was worried because he's like, you're trying to get out of here a little too damn quickly. But it's like, oh, no, it really is him. He's dead. It's okay. And he's like, well, the fact is, I always have other business for you guys. And they're like, no. And he's like, oh, excuse me, you way up there on your high horse. Because he's like, you're looking down on me because of my criminal life and stuff like that. You're criminals too. And I love the line he says where he's basically like, oh, basically, everyone kind of starts off kind of like in a certain area, but like eventually you kind of have to do more and more bad stuff, that eventually basically saying that just to survive they're going to have to do a lot of terrible stuff. And that's setting up some really interesting stuff for this season, that are they like in their search for justice and trying to like clear their names and stuff like that, they'll have to work a lot of criminal angles that will probably mean going against everything that they've ever believed in. And, you know, especially for Kurt, because Kurt's like the Boy Scout of this whole situation. So for him, it's going to be a situation of like going against your very code, very essence of who you are. Like, are you willing to cross some lines? Fact of the matter is, obviously, Patterson, to a certain extent, has dabbled in a little criminal activity, obviously hacking and stuff like that. Tasha's worked with the CIA, so her gray area is probably a little wider than most people. Jane's definitely is, just, you know, her entire past kind of fills that up with a lot more gray than black and white, you know. So I feel like out of anyone it hit him. Obviously, we're talking about Rich too. Rich is, you know, he's a good guy now, but he's not afraid from going a little criminal and be a little bad if he needs. So it's like that's why I say out of anyone it's going to affect Kurt potentially the most. But I think that's going to be such an interesting element to this season of them, like how, once again, and I brought it up earlier, like what other past criminals are they going to cross paths with, where it's like, oh, it's you, we're actually going to need your help. It's like, wait, you guys are on the dark side of things? Oh, you guys were such upstanding good guys, now you're on this side of on the territory. So there's that. At the same time, I love the whole situation at the FBI where it's like, you know, Whites is talking to Afrin about the whole situation. It's like, he thought it was her and she thought it was him. And it's like, okay, so if it's not you and it's not me, maybe it's the team sending up a signal, or maybe someone else sending up a red flare. We got to look into this ASAP. But there's a part of him that's like, no, I can't, because what if this is actually Madeline playing games? He's like, oh, she's got my brain in a pretzel. And it's like, don't worry, I'm buying time for the team and stuff like that for them to get rich, you know. And then it's like, okay, she was bringing in someone else to kind of decipher it. But Afrin's like, oh no, I figured it out. He's like, no, if you need more time. She's like, no, I got this. And I love when it was all said and done, White's going there. She's like, he's like, how can you do this to me and the team and to me? I bet you can't even look at yourself in the face. You know, you look at yourself in the mirror, you're just, I'm sure kind of disgusted and blah blah blah. And she's like, I lied, that's not, I gave her the wrong address. And he was like, well, you're very convincing. He's like, well, keep good. Just keep going. I love that. Once again, that's the complicated thing. You love Matthew White because he's such an asshole, but like since he kind of shifted over and became part of the team, you kind of like him even though he's slimy and skeezy. You still kind of like him to a certain extent. He's kind of a guy you're like, oh, I love you one moment, but I can also hate you the next. But obviously, because of the whole, like, them getting away from the CIA, Madeline's not too happy. And I love White's being like, oh, yeah, this is the most helpful I've felt in months. It's like, this is Afro, we're in this together. We're the resistance. The team, they're the offense. We're the defense. We got this. Madeline's not going to stop us. Oh, she brought in her own squad. And it's like, wait, what? And so Matthew's kind of like, okay, basically she's saying, like, he's like, whoa, did you hire mercenaries? She's like, no. And if you want to kind of put it in a more better language, because obviously even her positioning and stuff has actually gone up in the past 2 months, because apparently like she's the one that kind of looks into potential VPs for the president and stuff like that. So she's definitely wormed her way to the top. It's just kind of it's miraculous, not miraculous, just it shows you just how powerful and devious she is, that she was able to kind of spin the web and create this situation for herself. It's just, and that she comes out, not only does she come out scot-free, she also comes out on top. Obviously, like our team, But nevertheless, obviously, getting back to the squad and everything, Rich is like, oh, where's Reed? Is he not here? And they explain, like, Reed's dead. I was like, oh, I was not expecting. It's even more heartbreaking when you actually see it go down, because it's like, wait, they got the message at time they go underground. I was like, did, like, Reed die in the explosion? Like, what happened? I was like, no, they went underground, so they're okay. But then it's like, no, it turns out like he got pinned under some stuff and Tasha got pinned under him and that stuff. So he wants to lift the stuff up long enough to get Tasha out because she can't breathe. So it's about saving her, And for him, that's all that matters right now, is making sure she's okay. And Tasha's like, no. He's like, it's okay. She's like, we're not going to leave you. And he's like, you have to. And she's like, I'm tearing up. I'm like, no, dude. Like I said, it's bad enough knowing that he died. Like, seeing it like that is just heartbreaking. I'm just like, I'm trying to fight. I was like, I got to fight back to tears. And even, and him being like, you got, she's like, I won't ever leave you. He's like, of course you won't. Like, he's like, you're with me. You got me. And I got you. I always got you. And he dies. I'm like, oh. Because the entire time I was like, okay, is it going to be a fake out? Is it going to be like, oh, Reed's dead. Actually, he's secretly alive. I'm like, nope. That was the whole point, to be like, oh, we're not going to let you think like, oh, maybe on some level, maybe he survived. Maybe they're just not. It's like, no, we wanted them to know. We want the audience to know he's dead. Like they did that on purpose. That's why they had to show it, just to make you go like, oh, no, don't even try and theorize like, oh, maybe it's like, no, they watched him die. So you had to as well, to make it so like, you're not second guessing like, oh, maybe he's out there somewhere. So that's heartbreaking. And obviously for Tasha, she's kind of pissed because she's like, it's on everyone that Reed died. Like, the fact of the matter is, he's the one, like, I suggested we don't do that Iceland, stick around in Iceland for another job. But, you guys wanted to do this whole thing of clearing our name. And Kurt was like, that's what Reed wanted. She's like, no, that's what you wanted. So saying that Reed's death is on us, like, the fact of the matter is, like, we could have, it's just that thing of like, we could have done more. And she kind of walks away, because for her, it's a thing. And she even said, I thought was interesting, because it's like, you guys want to do this whole thing of clearing your names. She's like, we can walk away. We saved Rich. Cool. That's awesome. We can walk away. Fact of the matter is, we can be done with Madeline, with the tattoos, clearing our names. We can be done with it all and just live the lives we managed to have now. We're alive. Like, so we just live our lives, whatever it may become. Because for her, it's like, we can stop. And she's like, but you heard what I said. We can't stop. She's like, we won't though. And she's like, that's for her. It's like, that's the saddest thing, that we have this opportunity, but we won't walk away because that's who we are. And so, Rich ends up, oh yeah, I thought, I didn't know anyone's in here. She's like, no, yes, you did. And it's like, he's like, I know you were kind of against the whole like coming to rescue me thing, but he's like, it's cool though. He's like, I probably would have done the same thing. And she's actually, I knew where you were for a month. And he was like, okay, that's a little harder to hear. But I completely understand, because I most likely probably might have done the same thing. It's like, oh, that, but at the same time, it's like, she wants to, he's like, do you want to talk about anything? She's like, I don't want to talk about Reed, because obviously it's too painful for her. Because it's that thing of like, in that moment, it's like, I didn't say anything. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't say anything. So for her, it's like, I wasn't able to say anything to him. And Rich is like, you can say something to him anytime, even right now. So her and the team gathered up to kind of say their goodbyes to Reed of like, this won't be the last time we say your name or we think about you. And, and Tasha even saying, I got you. I'll always got you. And I'm like, oh, it's like, that sucks, dude. Like I said, that's because even that moment between Kurt and Jane, it's even ironic the statement he had said about like the fact is, well, it looks like that whole sandstorm training you got is actually going to come in handy because you're trying to stop a corrupt FBI. And it's like, lo and behold, it all came full circle. And even Jane's like, yeah, who would have guessed it would have actually come down to this? And it is a situation of, Kurt is like, usually I'm all about, giving out the orders and stuff like that. But he's like, at the end of the day, this is up to you because they got to figure out who this person is that's helping them. I mean, you'd assume it's an ally because they let them know where Rich is. But, I mean, who is this mysterious person? Is it just one person? Could they do this alone? I'm curious. I mean, they probably won't. But I'm curious, are they ever going to circle back to that? Like, she disappeared from season 4. Was Avery, Jane's daughter. Like, we never circle back to, like, the last time we heard her in like season 4 was like she was in college. I was wondering, does she have anything to do with this? Probably not. But it's like, what organization could this be that's like all about, helping Jane and stuff like that? That's why I'm so curious, like, what the hell that's about. Like, is it some like secret organization that like, could they be, because like we know like obviously the tattoos was a sandstorm thing, but do you think it like, well, because the remnants of sandstorm are gone, but like, could these be people who the tattoos originated with? Like, this has some importance to them, but I don't know. Maybe it's someone we met over the course of the series. Like, that's what I'm curious, like, who this group is, like, and why they decide they want to help out. Maybe it's for their own benefit, but why they want to help out Jane and the team, Madeline's, new people are, infiltrating. They're like clearing the board because Matthew had already talked about, she already cleared the board a little bit. Because even he was like, why are you keeping me around just to kind of disagree with me in front of their subordinates? Like, if you're threatening to fire me and stuff like that. But obviously she's kind of like, oh, you have your own place and, everything. Because it's like, she got Matthew to sign for the mercenaries because this way I think it gives her a buffer. If anything shady that goes down, I think it's like, oh, it falls on Matthew and not her. So she gives herself plausible deniability and stuff like that. But it also is interesting. Like the lead person she brought in, that actress, she looks so familiar. I can't quite place it. I have to look into it, but she looks familiar. Maybe I'm just kind of mistaken. But it seems like Madeline's offering her something. It's like, oh, like here's some like a biological weapon or something. It's like, oh yeah. And the look on her face, I'm like, once again, like last season showcased like how much of a like megalomaniac she is, and just like the fact that she's smiling like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna wipe that team out. It's just like she is the most super villain this show has ever gone. Like that's how I feel about it. Like I mean, I'd make the argument even Shepard was kind of a super villain. Even Roman was kind of a, misguided supervillain, but it's just like she's like the most dastardly, like twirling your mustache old school villain. Like she's definition of supervillain. It's like it's crazy, so like I said, a lot of interesting things went down. It's a lot of interesting setup for this season. This is the final chapter. Well before this, going into this, already knew it was going to be the final season and everything. Didn't know the fact is it's only going to be 11 episodes. That kind of took me by surprise. I would have expected 13. I wasn't expecting a full-blown season. I knew it was going to be 13. Just, once again, everything is like super short in the final season. But I wasn't expecting 11 episodes. I was like, that's such an odd number. But to be fair, like, hell, even 12 Monkeys' final season is like 11 episodes, so it's not that crazy. Hell, Arrow's final season was 10, but it just seemed weird. I would have expected 13, 11 just seemed like such an odd number, but it's like, I guess that's the number of episodes they needed to tell the story they needed to tell. Like, but I'm so curious to see how this final chapter wraps up. Like, their journey to clear their name. It's like, once again, what kind of dirty, like, shady criminal activity will they have to do in their pursuit to clear their name? And will it all work out in the end? Like, it's like, because even Jane was like, we will never have everything that we had before, but we have everything we need right now. So And obviously that being circled up, it's like we're going to get this done, so teams together, gathering the forces, getting ready for their plans. And obviously, like, the only people left on the inside is Afrin and Matthew. Everyone else has been cleared out, because like Madeline was like, oh, like everyone else is a little reluctant to kind of turn on their team. They have some favorite feel some connection to them. So it's like, I brought in people who have no connection, but it's like, because you're giving them something in return. And then it's just kind of like, how far are you willing to go? I mean, well, we already know how far you're willing to go. Hell, like, you have no special attachments to anyone. So regardless, I am so curious to see how this final season ends up playing out. I'm curious to see where the next episode takes us going forward on that journey. But really, that's all I want to talk about. And the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.